Very good evening to everyone. This is Indrakshi Bhattacharya from the Directorate of Journal and Publications ICMAI. Welcome you all to the webinar on the topic Economics of Transport and Logistics Sector. This is organized by the Directorate of Journal and Publications Department of ICMAI, and we are really honored to have with us as resource person today, CMA Obhik Ghosh sir. He is the Assistant General Manager, Reserve Bank of India, Kanpur. We welcome you, sir. From the Institute, we are really blessed to have with us our Chairman, Sir CMA Harshad Shamkant Deshpande, sir. He is the Chairman of the Journal and Publications Committee, ICMEI. We welcome you, sir. We have with us our HOD Madam, CMA Shuchurita Chakraborty Madam. She is the HOD of the Journal and Publications Committee, ICMEI. And we also have with us our journal team members also. So we welcome all of you. So just before we start, we are playing the Institute anthem and then we will continue with the program.
Indraksh, you can turn volume on. It is on mute. Does it? You know.
Sorry. Like, Ena ke na,
Indraksh, you can move on with the agenda. Na? You already
Yes,
played.
sir. Yes, sir. So now I would like to introduce our chairman, sir, CMA Harshad S. Deshpande, sir. Third is the CCM ICMI. He is the chairman WIRC 2020-21. He is a practicing cost accountant, insolvency professional, and registered valuer, independent director, social auditor. He is also the director ICMEI RVO. He is the member advisory committee of IPA of ICAI, member valuation standards board ICMEI RVO. He is also a member pre-fixation committee government of Maharashtra. He is a regular contributor of various online forums like caclubindia.com, taxguru.in. We welcome you, sir. Now requesting our chairman, sir, CMA Harshat is Deshpande, sir, for his address. Sir, please.
Thank you so much, Indrakshi and Sucharita madam, for organizing this webinar. So friends, every month we publish the magazine that is our management accountant on various themes. So last theme was on this transportation logistics sector, and you would be, I mean, if you have gone through, this was the wonderful article which was written by Avik Ghosh sir, and today we are grateful to him that he is there present. He is the AGM of Reserve Bank of India, Kanpur, and we are grateful that in order to make our interaction more fruitful and we want the author to express his things or rather the words between the lines. So that is the reason we called him, and we are grateful to him that he is there to explain his thoughts on these subjects. So this is one of the initiative that we are doing in order to have a better connectivity with respect to the topics what we are having on the theme of the management accountants. So very good evening to all of you. So I'm deeply honored to address this webinar organized by our journal department on this topic of economics of transport and logistics sectors. The transport and logistics sector is a silent element of the global trade, underpinning the seamless movement of the goods across the vast sectors. It is the sector that has got witnessed a tremendous growth, innovation, and transformation, especially in the context of the Indian ambitious economic plans. So different transportations ministry, may it be NHIA or it may be the sea transportation, the very big uh, project of Sagarmala. These all are the enablers of this change. At the heart of the sector's significant economic impact and its role as a critical driver of the national GDP. The logistics sectors in India is projected to grow at the CAGR of around 10 to 12% from 2020 to 2025, reflecting its pivotal role in supporting of the expansion of the e-commerce, manufacturing, and agricultural sector as well. The growth trajectory underscores the need of the efficient and cost-effective management solutions that can keep pace with the increasing demand. One of the major economic challenges faced by the sector is the high cost of the logistics, which currently constitutes around 13 to 14% of the India GDP. This is significantly higher than the global average. So global average is around say 8 to 10%. So to address this, the government has introduced several policy measures, which includes national logistics policy, the development of multi-modal logistics parks aiming to the reduce cost and improve the efficiency. Innovation is one of the cornerstone of this sector's evolution. The adoption of the digital technology like blockchain, artificial intelligence, and IoT, that is the Internet of Things, is revolutionizing the logistics operations. This technology is not only enhance the transparency and traceability, but also it streamlines the supply chain processes, leading to the significant cost savings and improved service delivery. Sustainability is also increasing important aspect in the sector's economics. As the world moves towards the greener and more sustainable practices, the logistics sectors must adapt, incorporating the eco-friendly initiatives such as the use of the electrical vehicles, or maybe sustainable packaging or recycling of the packaging materials, optimizing the route planning to reduce the carbon footprints. In conclusion, this transport and logistics sector is a cornerstone of the economic growth of and development of this nation. Its ability to adapt to the changes, embrace the innovation, implement the sustainable practices will determine its future trajectory. As a cost accountants and as a financial experts, our role is to analyze, advise, strategize for this sector is invaluable. So together we can drive the sector for the greater efficiency, sustainability, and economic prosperity. So I look forward hearing more from our speaker who has also written a wonderful article in the last month management accountant. So I will request all of you to also go through after the session is over. After hearing out, you will be in the position to uncover many of the things which perhaps you may or may not find in the articles. So I thank you for your attention, and I look forward for engaging and insightful discussions. So once again, I thank our guest speaker, Avik Ghosh sir, and I welcome you. Thank you very much, and let's enjoy the session.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, our chairman, sir. So I would have the privilege of introducing now our speaker, CMA Obi Ghosh, sir. He is an assistant general manager, Reserve Bank of India, and also a PhD scholar from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. Mr. Obi Ghosh, he is an electric engineer from Jadavpur University, Kolkata, turned central banker. He is working as an assistant general manager at the Reserve Bank of India, Kanpur, and has worked in areas like financial inclusion and development, currency management, auditing, and budgeting in the central bank. He is a cost and management accountant, FRM, JAIIB, CAIIB, financial modeling and valuation analyst, and certified banking and credit analyst. He holds a postgraduate diploma in machine learning and deep learning from Triple IT Bangalore. He joined the Indian Institute of Technology Kanpur in 2020 as a doctoral scholar, working in the area of development economics with a special emphasis on public finance. He has qualified UGC NET in management. Before joining the Reserve Bank of India in 2015, he has worked in Schneider Electric for 6 years in various areas like corporate finance, business development, and strategy. Sir has a research interest in development economics, financial econometrics, and policy studies. His work was published in many national and international journals, including publications in Scopus and ABTC indexed journals, and he has presented his papers at various international conferences. We welcome you, sir. It's really a privilege and honor for us to have with us today. Now requesting CMA Obi Ghosh sir for his presentation. So,
Thank you very much. Am I audible? Yeah. Respected
sure.
Chairman Sri Deshpande and all other team members who had organized this program, a very big thank you to all of you, and a very good evening to all. I am also honored and privileged for such a nice introduction, as well as the invitation I have received to speak for a few minutes about the sectoral uh, development in transportation and logistics. Uh, as the session talks about economics of transportation and logistics sector. So first, the primarily thing that comes to our mind is economics. The sector is deep dived into various aspects. However, we should focus on the economics of the sector because it is having a lot of challenges within it. It is having a lot of potentials, and that would take the country's growth potential forward. So, considering the length and breadth of the sector, the importance of the sector in terms of an all-embracing economic growth is extremely important. So, what I would like to do, I would like to talk about initially the sector, the determinants, followed by the global perspective, then the Indian perspective, the future plans, some research outcomes that where this sector is leading to, and then some future endeavors, the long run relationship between the macroeconomic variables and the sectoral variables, and where we can move forward and land up to in terms of contributing to the overall dream of 25 uh, a trillion dollar economy by 2047. So that would be the flow of the discussion, or I mean my presentation. And I would also request you to ask questions once I complete my presentation. So let me start with the sharing a small PPT. PPT is not that essential in terms of discussing, but still, I mean, just to have something a ready reckoner. So is the PPT visible, madam?
Yes, sir, it's visible, sir.
Yeah. So I would like to start with the very basic of the sector. We the time we talk about the transportation and logistics sector, firstly, we let us before getting into these the constituents, determinants, and the efficient logistics infrastructure, let us first clarify the conceptual thing about the value chain management and supply chain management. These two often we use very commonly, and transportation and logistics sector is an integral part of the supply chain management, which is also a subpart of value chain management. Once we talk about, I mean, in terms of in economic terms, once we talk about production and from production till the delivery, service delivery or the product delivery, the channel consists of various inputs, value addition, and various factors that contribute to the overall service delivery or the product delivery. So that includes like inventory management, transportation and distribution, timely delivery, as well as value addition. So the time we talk about this transportation and logistics sector, these are mostly integrated for the supply chain management, which is starting from the raw material stage to the delivery stage of any product. And value chain is somewhere ingrained in the supply chain, and broadly, we come out to the overall economic constituents of the sector. I mean, from production till service delivery, we have various channels to cover, and where this transportation and logistics sector contribute, it contributes almost everywhere. So let's talk about a very basic concept of production till delivery to the warehouses. It requires logistics and transportation thoroughly. Then from the distribution of the warehouses to the end points, it also requires the transportation sector's contribution. So in both supply chain as well as in broader terms in value chain management, transportation and logistics sector is inevitable. So and the contribution and the dependency of the logistics sectors on these outcomes or the service delivery is extremely essential. So let us talk about the constituents and determinants of the sector. What is the difference between constituents and determinants? Constituent means what actually makes the sector. What been pointed out over here, like inventory management, distribution and transportation, warehousing, demand planning, fleet management. These are all some, the commonly used terms of logistics and transportation sector in terms of the normal real economy. What is real economy? Real economy is nothing but consumption, expenditure, income, and what physically we can see, which is different from market economy. Market economy, where I mean, we talk about stock market, equity, derivatives. So that is market economy. And real economy means what we physically can see. The transportation and logistics sector is an ingredient of this real economy, where people generate some. I mean, may it be agriculture, may it be industry, may it be service delivery. So they generate something, they produce something, and the end product is getting delivered to the end user. So there lies the importance of the sector. It is contributing to the real economy and the subsequent real economic growth of our country everywhere. I mean, globally it is applicable. So coming to the determinants, what are the determinants? Determinants means which actually contributes to the variability of the sector. How we can presume that transportation or logistics sector can have a boost the time you have correct pricing, because market is extremely cost, as Chairman G also pointed out, that it is very cost sensitive. The time you have correct pricing, you have analyzed the opportunity cost correctly, and you have an efficient system in place, you have a better opportunity to have an efficient sector. And the time we talk about efficient sector, what are the components of such efficient sectors? Cost reduction and competitiveness. Market is competitive, you have to be, the sector has to be cost effective to be competitive. Coming to the integration part, I have written over here economic integration, but it's actually an all-encompassing integration. Means there should not be a point wherein we are losing efficiency to, let's say, from production to warehousing, then warehousing to distribution channels to the end user. Everywhere there is a scope of losing efficiency. The time we have an integrated system. May it be through a single point solution, or may it be through, like, some latest technology driven integration processes. The time we have an integrated, all encompassing system in place, there is a chance of having higher efficiency. Coming to technology adoption, we'll discuss in detail about the prospective technology adoption and how that can make the sector, the transportation and logistics sector, more efficient. Of course, employment generation, the time we have economic, macroeconomic variables in place, the growth prospect in place, there is always a scope of employment generation. And this sector is actually contributing immensely. Because presently in India, we have almost 22 million people depending on the sector in terms of employment. Now, the connectivity and accessibility, of course, the time we have better, it's having a vicious cycle. Like the time we have higher efficiency, we have better system in place, we have higher growth, higher employment generation, more income, more expenditure, more economic growth. So it's just sort of a vicious cycle. Okay, so the time we talk about economics cannot go without like demand and supply. So I mean, I mentioned over here the factors. I mean, in terms of uh, uh, let's say logistics and transportation per se, the demand and supply factors, it varies actually. There are various type of logistics. I mean, the time we go deeper into the sectoral perspective, there are various factors contributing to to the demand and supply of logistics sectors. Like we have uh, normal commuting, like people are traveling from one place to another. It requires logistics. Like special events, you go for some special occasions, some social activities, maybe recreation, maybe something related to a business perspective, all requires logistics support. So it can be direct, it can be indirect. So how do we measure the supply and demand of the sector? Usually, I mean, in terms of literature, in terms of presently available theoretical underpinnings, what we see that it's about the fleet for passengers as well as for cargo, as well as the distance covered. So, I mean, usually in research, we use ton kilometer because ton is the load, I mean, the freight load, and kilometer is the distance travel, because that indicates the overall position of the volume of the sector. So it varies from one segment to the other. And similarly, what about the supply? Supply means here, I mean, I have used a term called modal supply and intermodal supply. This is a very integral part of the sector. Modal supply is the modes of transports. We have air, we have railways, we have roadways. So these are the mode of transport. So how much are we ready to provide those modes of transport to the end user or those who are asking for that? So left side is the demand side, right side is the supply side. When we ask for commuting or travel or deliveries or warehousing or some distribution transport. So everywhere there is a demand, and we have the modes of transport, modes of logistics sector to meet the demand. And what about intermodal supply? Intermodal supply is actually the ingredient of the modal supply, which is, let's say we have a road transport system available with us. We have enough supply of roads because just, I mean, out of the context, but in India, we have 66% almost the volume of this sector is covered by roadways, followed by 31% railways, and remaining 3% by others. So intermodal supply is actually the conjugal point between one mode to another mode. Means we have, let's say we are transporting through port, and from port to the endpoint we're routing it through roadways. So we have intermodal supply ingredients inbuilt in the overall system. So this is the supply part, whether we have those modal and intermodal supply available with us or not. So the time we compare demand and supply together, I mean, entire economics is all about demand and supply matching. So in India, I mean, presently from India's perspective, we have demand because India is growing rapidly in terms of the growth percentages, and we have to meet the supply of those higher demands due to the growth in production and consumption and income through various supply mechanism. So, I mean, as a student of economics, we all know that what is the elasticity of that particular demand supply mechanism is per unit change in cost, how much is it impacting the demand? All the modes of logistics and transportation sector, all the modes are having different elasticity. That is also important in terms of evaluating the cost of that particular mode of transport. Why? Because let's say for emergency, if the cost of the transport increases, still we have emergency, we have to go. So that cost doesn't matter much. So if you see the graph, the emergency curve is having a very low slope. It means it is having a very low elasticity of demand, because if the cost also increases, demand doesn't increase much or demand doesn't change much. If cost reduces also, demand will be hardly changing, because emergencies, when it comes, it comes. But for recreation, if the cost increases, for recreation logistics transportation, of course the demand will vary, because we can somehow get rid of the recreation part, but we cannot get rid of the emergency part. So all the componential factors of the sector are having different elasticity of demand. It actually matters while deciding the pricing of the sector. Subsequently, we'll be discussing the prices, the pricing positions of different sectors. However, this elasticity of demand will help us to adjust the pricing and to land up to a effective cost or pricing of the sector. Okay, so as I said, we'll just touch upon the global perspective of the sector. The sector is a extremely booming sector. As we all know, growth is there. Post-COVID growth is actually even higher because of the lower base effect. So the global logistics market size accounted for almost $9 trillion in 2023. It is expected to be around $22 trillion by 33, means in 10 years, it is going to see a very high growth with a CAGR of around 9.5%. And which are the key contributors? The key contributors are mostly e-commerce and the latest technologies, because slowly we'll be moving from one mode of transport to, let's say electric vehicle, uh, green batteries are in pipeline, a lot of new innovations are in pipeline, energy efficient components, energy mix, a better energy mix for climate friendly transport fuel dynamics. So all these are in pipeline. So anyways, demand is going to increase, and we have to meet the demand through rationalizing the operational cost. We have to work on the margins and the stringent global value chain mechanism is extremely important. Coming to the market of the sector, Asia Pacific market is the highest market in terms of global volume. So almost 44% market of logistics sector is catered by Asia Pacific, followed by North America, which is around 25%, then 21.8% by Europe, and then subsequently smaller percentage by other continents. So Asia Pacific, so that is the area where we are focusing on. Our country belongs to that area. We have a strong emerging economy, and being a sort of a front runner EMDC country, we can contribute immensely. The sector is having a very strong growth potential, and subsequently we're discussing about the sectoral perspective from India's point of view. So coming to the India's perspective, as I said, it is livelihood for more than 22 million people, uh, contributing to almost 13 to 14% of the total GDP, the sectoral GDP of transportation and logistics sector. Government increased the capital investment substantially. Uh, the graphs over here are just an indicative sort of what can I say, indicative hint or a prod that how much the sector is going to contribute in terms of the economic growth of the country. Presently, we are at seventh in terms of nominal GDP, followed by, we're expecting, presently we're at sixth, expecting to be third by 2027 estimates. And then investment as a percent of GDP also going to rise from 30.2% in 2016 to nearly 33.7% in 2027. And so, in 2020, wherein we were landing somewhere up to 2.7 trillion USD GDP, Presently, we are at $3.55 trillion GDP, and we are expecting that we'll land somewhere more than 20 in next 20 years. So just to have such kind of a rapid growth, what sort of development in the sector we need? The projection, this is uh, an abstract taken from one of the reports published by EY Ernst and Young, where they are saying that the sectoral growth needs to be uh, extremely high. Now coming to the freight ton kilometer, as I said earlier, how we measure the sectoral volume. Presently, we are standing at somewhere around 3 trillion ton kilometer in 2020, and the time we expect a five-fold growth or six-fold growth in next 20 years, we have to have a 4.5 times growth in terms of the freight volume as well. So this sector is having a lot of potential once we have the target set for ourselves to achieve higher GDP growth. So what are we, I mean, how are we achieving those? So various schemes been implemented by government as Chairman Mr. Deshpande was also mentioning about National Logistics Policy, Gati Shakti scheme, multimodal logistics park. So everything is in place. But what are the deliverables? I mean, let us talk something related to the economics of the sector. So, what exactly do we want? We want higher macroeconomic and strong macroeconomic parameters. We want growth, we want employment, we want higher consumption, more income, and an efficient sectoral parameters. So, like just for an example, I mean, how we measured the development in roadways, the manufacturing of road. Let's say, I mean, highway development. Last to last year, like in 2022, per day, making of normal roadways were somewhere around 20.7 kilometer, and substantially got increased to around 23 kilometer a day by 2023, and so a substantial 15% growth for 1 year. So these are the measurable determinants where we can see that the growth is visible. That is in terms of roadways. Now coming to the multimodal logistic parks. Government had taken the initiative not much back. I mean, it's a very recent initiative. 35 multimodal logistic parks are already in place, nearly 35, 34 or 35. And a reasonable high investment of around 60,000 crores being done on that. So the time we talk about the projection, of course, in next 5 to 7 years, in a recent policy paper, government is talking about more than 100 multimodal logistic parks. So the theme of multimodal logistic park means, as in the demand supply slide, I spoke about the modal and intermodal transportation or logistics mechanism. What is multimodal means? We have various modes of transport in the totally integrated in a single platform, single location, and you have a complete solution for all the modes of transport in a single contract. For intermodal transport, we require multiple contracts to be executed, wherein for multimodal logistics parks and multimodal logistics systems, we need to have only one single contract, one single document, one single point of integration platform where people can avail all these modes and various intermodes of freight transport together. So the focus is very clear in terms of various modes of transport. Now, I mean, the time we talk about railways, roadways, transport development, what about the investment? So, I mean, it's not about only talking about the growth numbers. It's about the capital investment. The time we have these sort of infra projects in place, we have to have a strong capital formation, means creation of fixed assets, creation of something which would be giving us the results in long term. So for that, government is also extremely keen in terms of improving the budget, giving more capital budget to the respective ministries, like the Ministry of Roadways, Transport and Highways North. Initially, I mean, talking about 5 years back, they had a tentative total budget size of nearly 7 to 8 billion USD. Now in this year, it had gone up to somewhere around 28 to 29 billion USD. So in the last 5 6 years, we have seen a fourfold growth. So that fourfold growth is actually having some intent to feed all these long-term plans to achieve that Vision 2047. What is Vision 2047? Very simple. Our GDP growth, a significant GDP growth, and I mean, in next slide, I have explained it. Actually, we have a significant target of a five-fold GDP growth by 2047. So by 2027, we want to reach a GDP of US dollar 5.5 trillion, and in next 20 years, we want to five-fold it. So it's all about having a target, putting the strategies in place, and to target those with certain policy mechanisms. So uh, once we discuss India's perspective, the initiatives taken by government, the long-term expectation from the sector, and its contribution to the overall, the perspective of growth in terms of numbers. What are the causal factors? Now, slowly I'm moving from the sectoral brief towards the economic perspective of the sector. What are the causal factors? I mean, I mean, I want to say about the causality. Once we do a simple regression or correlation, we see that these are related, these are correlated. There is a relationship between these two variables, like increase in roadways and GDP growth. But these are not the causal factors. Causal factors are those factors which are causing each other. So means the time we have, let's say, increased roadways today, after 2 years, we will have a straight away impact on GDP growth. So there is a lag between that variable and its impact in long term. So basically, these determinants are causing the outcome, maybe in the short run or in the long run, but however, it will persist. So the causes are having a long-term sustainable impact on the outcome variables. So, I mean, these may be jargon sometimes, but let us physically think about that which can be the macroeconomic determinants which can have a strong causal factor related with the transportation and logistics sector. We have spoken about GDP growth very straight away. Uh, uh, the factor GDP growth, the more growth, more consumption, more expenditure, more transportation and deliverables. Coming to inflation. Inflation is a very controlled aspect. I mean, let's not get deeper into that, but yes, moderated inflation would result in a sustainable GDP growth, and that would contribute also a sustainable growth in the logistics sector. Coming to interest rate, various research had formalized various perspective of interest rate in terms of the transportation sector. Most of the common theories say that once we have higher interest rate, we have lower credit. Very basic assumption. Lower credit means lower industry. I mean, reduction in industry numbers, lower GPA, and resulting in degrowth or poor growth rate of the sector. So interest rate is having somewhere up to a certain extent a positive relationship with the outcome variable. However, for logistic and transportation sector, which is extremely capital intensive, that is a very key point to be noted. Capital intensive sector, it is mostly having a negative relationship. So we have a controlled interest rate should be in place. Then the fiscal policy. What is fiscal policy? The government determined tax rates. It has to be conducive to the people who are operating in the sector. Then regulation, restriction, and policy intervention. Policy interventions are extremely important thing in research in terms of any sector. So let's say talking about transportation sector first. We have multimodal logistics parks planned everywhere. So let's say this particular theme. This is a hypothetical assumption. Let's say this particular theme is doing extremely well. So the policy intervention of that particular multimodal logistic park is contributing immensely. So let's take that to be a policy shock given, positive policy shock given to the sector, and we can determine the long-term impact of the sector in terms of its volume as well as efficiency growth. So it is having a causal direct impact on the sectoral outcome. What is the sectoral outcome? Again, the outcome variables written over there in the bottom of the slide. the passenger transport number, freight transport, as we discussed, the distance, tonnage, and ton kilometer means we are quantifying the outcome. I mean, we cannot keep on saying that the sector is growing, matching the GDP, expecting to be even more higher. So how to determine that? So these are the outcome variables, and precisely the positive policy shocks give policy positive uh, sectoral outcome in terms of improving its growth potential. Gross capital formation, very important. Capital intensive sector, the time you have strong capital uh, infusion or flow in the sector, you have always a leeway to have a sectoral growth. Now, household consumption and expenditure, which is extremely related to the overall growth of GDP as well. So the time you have more consumption means more product needed, more transportation logistic push. More production means more industry. Again, various in between supply chain and value chain components will be coming. The time those components will be coming, there would be a direct impact on the sector. So this sector is extremely correlated with the multiple componential effect of the total household consumption as well as expenditure. Investment, yes, in the previous slides I've shown that how capital intensive investment improves the growth potential of the sector. Export, I mean, I need not explain much. Same thing related with the GDP stuff. Agri GVA, industry GVA. What is GVA? The gross value added. I have, I did not consider the taxes and subsidies over here. Let's say the only value added stuff for both the sectors, agriculture and industry. The more you have agri GVA, the more you have industry GVA means you have added components of both supply chain and value chain in the process that would definitely contribute to the positive development of the transportation logistics sector. Once we talk about these numbers, I mean these basic concepts of causality, causal factors impacting the sector per se, as well as the basic economics of a sector. Let's just have a look at some of the research findings. It's not, I mean, what been done on India's perspective. These are some, you know, the perspective of OECD or developed countries. Let us see that what developed countries had seen in the past. So there is a possibility of the same getting replicated for us in the future because initially they did not have that sort of green consciousness. They initially were having a very high carbon footprint, and now based on the embargo and the various conventions, global or international or national conventions, they are extremely restricted in using fossil fuel. And transportation is extremely driven by fossil fuel, especially in terms of India's context. So this result is, I mean, don't go by the numbers and all. This result is extremely clear that just see the variables L road, L air, and uh, but mostly these two variables. These two variables are road length variable and air feet volume variable. These are having a very strong relationship with the GDP. So a unit increase in, let's say, road transport is contributing to 6.7% increase in GDP. Similarly, for air, it is contributing 1.2% increase in GDP. So for OECD countries, it's very evident that the growth in the sector, that is transportation and logistics sector, is contributing positively to the long-term GDP growth. So whatever theory we have discussed, prospective we have discussed, getting somewhere contemplated and retrospected in terms of the development of OECD countries. Now from here, let's say we think about the future prospects of the sector, which is mostly driven by a very sensitive and sensible energy mix, where non-fossil fuel intervention would be extremely important. Green energy would play a very important role. AI/ML driven, I mean, recently we're talking about, let's say, green hydrogen, green batteries. See, all these things will come into play in future. So non-fossil fuel driven transportation and logistics. So this is another research finding. a very simplified version wherein there is an econometric term called grandeur causality, wherein we only decide that which is causing what. So I have just rounded two variables. One is DLRES, that is nothing but the ratio between transport's renewable fuel consumption per capita. So this is also done for OECD countries. Per capita renewable energy consumption in transportation sector is having no causality with the carbon dioxide emission in the sector. It means the time you have a non-fossil fuel driven renewable energy in place, it is not badly impacting the CO2 emission or carbon footprint. However, just go to the next variable, that is DLFF, which is per capita usage of fossil fuel in uh, transports fossil fuel consumption. It is impacting the CO2 emission very significantly. It is impacting the uh, uh, GDP in negative terms. It is also influencing the overall usage of electricity, maybe in terms of carbon tonnage. So overall, the damage done to the environment through transportation and logistics sector is very much linked with the fossil fuel driven usage of uh, fuels in the sector. However, the time we have this the alternative energy in place, it is proven that it is not impacting the environment much. So, getting an idea of how and why we are inching towards a lesser carbon footprint driven, clean energy driven transportation sector. From India's perspective, also, we have seen that the road transport sector is heavily dependent on imported fossil fuel, as I said earlier, and we have a very dynamic linkages amongst transport, logistics, FDI, and economic growth. Most of the things I have already said, but however, various researchers have already elaborated in terms of empirically investigating that the relationship persists. Okay, now as I started talking about the short run variables, the long run variables of the sector. It's very simple. The determinants means those which are causing the outcome of the sector. What is the outcome of the sector? Increased freight, increased volume, increased tonnage, and increased supply and an efficient supply demand mechanism. So that is our objective. That is a determinant. So what are the short-term determinants? Policy intervention. It is actually both short-term and long-term determinants. It may be both fiscal and sectoral. Fiscal means, let's say, tax incentive to the sector. It is fiscal determinant, and the sectoral determinants like national logistic policy. So which is a sectoral boost. Then the investment in the sector. Then the trade volume. The more trade, the more both interstate or cross-border logistics and transportation, more volume of uh, the sectoral outcomes. So, sectoral growth is also inevitable. Now, the long run determinants. Future is all about energy efficient, green non-fossil fuel driven resources. And for that, green logistic technology is having a very long run expectation on the sector. Energy mix, proper balance between fossil fuel and non-fossil fuel driven sources to take care of the sector. Initially, we cannot say that maybe in 5 years will totally be green in terms of usage of fossil fuel. But yes, there is a beginning of a favorable energy mix. How do we determine energy mix? Means the balance between fossil fuel and non-fossil fuel driven resources. And of course, technological innovation. Technological innovation is something which is having a pivotal role everywhere. In the future, would be totally, IoT driven, robotics driven, and the sector also would, the transportation logistics sector also would have a very key role to play in terms of the uh, technological innovation. Just, a data to be shared. It came, somewhere related to the sector. I was reading somewhere that the robotics intervention in the transportation and logistics sector alone was somewhere around 7 billion USD last year and is expecting to reach $70 billion in 10 years' time. So, a tenfold growth in 10 years' time. So, this much relevance that sector may play in terms of determining the shape of the transportation sector in future. This technological innovation may play such a role. Apart from this AI, ML, and robotics intervention, the economic and technical integration of the sectoral components. In the very first slide, I spoke about the integration concept, means production uh, and delivery. In between, all value chains and supply chain components should be integrated through a single point, technically driven, efficient solution method. So all this requires a strong technological innovation and AI/ML driven forecasting mechanism, wherein we can forecast the load factors, how much volume of freight is required in future, in what point in time, and how that can be catered to. So these are the long run perspective of the sector. So we spoke about climatic impact, we spoke about production driven GDP growth. The more growth, again, I'm telling you, the more production, more growth, more consumption investment, sectoral boost, but will contribute to a negative climatic impact. So, I mean, usually in all these type of energy conflict, we talk about trilemma. Trilemma is a energy climate growth trilemma. Here I'm talking about a sectoral quadrilemma where we have a production driven growth followed by consumption investment, then the sectoral boost and the negative climatic impact. We have to take care of all these together to come to a solid forecasting strategy and to get rid of the negative aspects of the sector and give it an efficient boost in the long run, because end of the day we have to have a target which is already set to have a to achieve a significant GDP growth, and for that the sector will play a pivotal role. Uh, Whatever I have said about the prospective sectoral efficiency, uh, intervention of technology, robotics, logistical integrated supply chain management. So these are basically the prospective future aspects, multimodal logistics, wherein all these port and shipping, air cargo, rail transport, and road logistics should be integrated together. We have a single point solution and single point integrated, efficient, serviceable delivery point. That is a single point agenda. And coming to the very last part of the discussion, what about the research areas? I mean, being a researcher, I always look forward to identify the sectoral determinants, the areas where we can really look into and where we can contribute in terms of identifying a method or a procedure to forecast the growth potential and determinants for policy making. So, what I mean in terms of policy making, what does a policymaker require? They would always prefer to have a guiding path and a readily available forecasting, let's say, a model that would help them to project the deliverables in the future. So this is how policies are usually built. Now coming to the sector, that transportation and logistics sector, very often, I mean, we can see that I mean, newspapers also in various research papers also, the sale of vehicles, maybe four wheelers or two wheelers, are a very important growth indicator, which is also called a high frequency indicator. Why? Because this sector is giving us a sort of overview of the consumption dynamics of the people. So, I mean, even you go to Economic Times or any, I mean, business newspapers or even in non-generic Times of India newspapers, when we have some sort of numbers coming, CPI, inflation number, WPI, inflation number, or some growth numbers, always we see the passenger vehicle dynamics. Why? Because this sector is a sector which is having direct impact on the life of the people. So the time people are having some additional money, they will go and buy a vehicle. The time you have, let's say, I mean, it based on, I mean, how much you are able to do the expenditure. So this sector is extremely integral to the life of people. And the high frequency indicator, that is the annual vehicle sales indicator, is very predominantly used in the research of economics. So the sector is also having a strong potential in terms of future prediction of growth, prediction of inflation, and prediction of macroeconomic determinants. Uh, the prospective research areas can be a long-run equilibrium models, as I said, long-run equilibrium model between energy mix and sectoral determinants. There may be a study can be conducted based on the causality factors of some policy shocks or interventions that we spoke about, multi-modal logistic park or national logistic policy. So 10 years down the line, how will that be impacting both the sector volume as well as the carbon footprint of the sector? So these are broadly the areas where we can really look into to perform the prospective future research. So mostly I've covered what I intended to cover, and I hope the agenda that I initially discussed, I've covered most of the things. So thank you. That's it from my end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
I would request some questions if there is any.
Yes, sir. We have received a few questions.
Yeah.
So how do global events and economic fluctuations impact the sector?
Should I answer one by one? That will be
Yeah,
better.
yeah, yes, sure.
Global events, like as I said, the policy intervention or the policy shocks, they have both positive and negative impact on the sector. Positive policy shock, which we sometimes call a positive policy factor, they are having positive impact on the sector. For an example, this type of favorable fiscal as well as sectoral policy, those are having positive impact. However, the global events like, let's say, Brexit has proven to be a very negative impact on the transportation sector in Europe. So the northwest European part of UK and all got stuck up due to this. Various industries got affected, and sector had a very sort of negative factors due to the Brexit thing. So negative policies are always having a negative impact on the sector. So there have been proven through researches, and it is very genuine in terms of the causality that we discussed.
Which method is optimal? Northwest corner rule or least cost method or Vogel's approximation method if supply and demand are not balanced? This is one question. And the second question is, do you think petro product prices have a major impact on transportation cost structure?
Yeah, firstly, it varies. It depends on which type of transportation we're talking about. There cannot be a uniform method of optimizing the cost. So all the three methods can be applicable. However, it requires that supply demand of that particular sector or that particular mode of transport. So it varies from the mode of transport. Coming to the petrol product thing, it is already proven through various researches. These are having very strong impact. India, being a major importer of petroleum products, are having a very negative impact on the higher pricing of petroleum products. The sector is also having a negative impact. However, for those who are actually manufacturing, rather excavating that petroleum, I mean, those who are very well placed in terms of the petroleum products like Middle East countries and all, they don't, I mean, it's all about where it is getting produced and where it is getting used. So the time you have a country like India, significant importer of petroleum oil and having always a negative impact on the sectoral growth. However, it's reverse for those who are not importing, rather who are exporting.
Okay, sir. How to make the transport sector more efficient? CM Srinivasan has asked how to make the transport sector more efficient.
That I have discussed the very first slide. Better cost effectiveness. Of course, opportunity cost should be managed. More technologically innovated technologies to be used. And of course, end of the day, it's all about the optimized management of both supply chain and value chain. So first slide, I discussed this.
What was the total net revenue in crores to Indian economy from logistics and transport sector for the financial year 2023-24?
Usually these type of data are not getting published, the revenue in terms of the sector, but the GDP was of the tune of, as I said, 3.55 billion, trillion dollar in 2024, and around 435 billion dollar, which is around 13 to 14% of the total GDP volume, was contributed by transportation and logistics sector. So it's around 13-14% of the total GDP volume.
Nilanjan Majumdar has asked, what are the metrics used in supply chain like OTIF, on time in full?
I didn't get it actually. I mean, again, just repeat the question.
What are the metrics used in supply chain like OTIF, on time in full? What are the metrics?
I'm not getting it actually. Sorry.
Exactly. Water transport expected to be cost effective has still not developed in India. Any government initiative to increase water transport share?
That's been done already, discussed also. Chairman Mr. Deshpande also discussed Agarmala project, one of the flagship projects of the government, and also this multimodal that logistic thing that I've also discussed. These are having a port, the waterway communication also a part of that. So this things are already in place. However, it had not taken a Philips in last 3-4 years, but already initiatives are in place.
Thank you so much, sir. So we have received also many more questions due to time constraint. We are unable to take all those questions. Sir, we can share your PPT, no? This PPT to our
Definitely, yeah.
participants.
You can.
Yeah,
Not a
yeah.
problem.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. So with this, we have come close to this question answer part. So now I would request CMA Sucharita Chakraborty, madam. She is the HOD of our Journal and Publications Committee, ICMAI, to give the vote of thanks. Madam, please.
করে দিয়েছি
Ma'am, please.
Shubh Vijaya. We are now celebrating Shubh Vijaya. We Bengalis pranam, Shraddha to all our seniors, and Shubhecha of Bhalobasha to all our juniors. Now we have to conclude this insightful session, and now the time of vote on thanks. And vote on thanks means we have to say goodbye for this session. Now I'm thankful to all of you. Special thank to our resource person, CMA Ovik Ghosh, for his presentation, for his discussion regarding this issue. And specifically, he not only discussed about the current scenario, he also discussed and focused future challenges also regarding this sector. And we are thankful to our chairman for his encouragement and as well as his active participation. We also thankful to our participants for their engagement and thoughtful questions. And we hope you found the session informative. We feel happy, we feel proud that our member, Mr. Ovik Ghosh, is working in RBI, and hope we will call again, and he will also guide us, help us, support us as a resource person for the future webinar to be conducted. And we are thankful to our journal and technical team. And namaskar, Shubh Vijay.
Thank you so much. Thanks to our speaker, Team Ubi Koshas, for such a deliberate presentation. Thanks to our chairman sir, thanks to our IT team and also to the participants for interacting so well with us. So we conclude this program with the Institute anthem now. So with this, we are concluding this program. Thank you so much.